Okay, Madam Chair, we are live and ready when you are.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our Friday, June 25th, 2021, 2:04 City Council work session. Do we need a roll call?
No.
Okay. All right. We have item A, we called to order. Item B, discussion topics. Item B1 is Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association FY22 coverage.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tempore. I am going to share my screen on Zoom here so that we can be looking at the same document together. And I wanted to thank Council for making the time to have a work session during the work week. We can work with other people's schedules so that we can make them in the evening. So what would best work for all council members in the future. Okay. So here's our work session packet for today. And as the Mayor Pro Tempore shared, we're going to be talking about our insurance. And I'm very happy that our current insurance company, Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association's Executive Director, Kevin Smith, and Paul, you'll have to forgive me because I can't remember your exact title, but we have two representatives, Kevin Smith and Paul Briner with AML-JIA, to help us in this discussion. So I would appreciate Council opening up your work session packet to page 3. So on page 3, this is a breakout of our insurance costs for FY21. And it shows you how AML-JIA ranked our general liability coverage, which includes public officials liability and workers' compensation, auto liability, property, police professional liability. And with the 3-year agreement that we have in place, which expires at the end of this fiscal year, our insurance bill for FY21 was $89,466. So I wanted Council to see what FY21 was, because now on the next page, which is page 5, I believe, you're going to see the breakout of costs for FY22. So again, the same categories of general liability, which also includes the public officials liability, workers' comp, auto liability, property, police professional liability. And that brings us to $96,776. And if we do not elect to have a 3-year agreement in place with AML-JIA, our insurance bill would be $102,000 for FY22. And so because of the city's current financial standing, I was trying to think of ways in which we could reduce our coverage with AML-JIA in a way that still protected the interests of the city, but lowered our FY22 bill. And so the way that I tackled that with AML-JIA's assistance is I asked Paul Briner, oh, here's your title, Paul, the underwriting manager of AML-JIA, to look through 3 scenarios that I proposed for the city to consider for our insurance coverage. And so on page 11 and 12, you'll see the breakout of those total costs. Our current scenario with a 3-year agreement in place would cost the city for FY22 about $97,000. Scenario A would cost us a little over $85,000. Scenario B, we're at a little over $84,000. And I'm sorry, scenario C got onto the next page, but that's just a little under $84,000. And so those scenarios were based on a few different factors. If you go to page 13 in your packet, you'll see our current insurance coverage for property, fleet items, which are our automobiles, and then heavy equipment. So you'll see everything that we have insured, the year it was built, what condition it is in, its value, and the deductible associated with that improvement or building, and our fleet, which are our regular automobiles and heavy equipment. So page 13 was how we got to our current bill for FY22, that's before you. And if we just look at the fleet items and the buildings, we come to a total cost of about $45,000. So remember, our overall bill for FY22 is under $102,000 with the 3-year agreement in place. And there's other items that make up that bill: general liability, workman's comp, police professional liability. Those we can't really change. The categories that we can change are presented here before you. And so what I asked for AML-GIA's help, you'll see in scenario A on page 14. I went through our FY22 budget because our budget has an inventory of our city assets, including facilities and equipment. And I looked at the input that staff gave for how those pieces of equipment are looking or how the facility is looking. And I used that information to help me evaluate, can we remove this item off of the schedule? Or could we reduce the deductible? Those assets are being valued at. So for example, back on page 13, you'll see that we have the boat wash facility. You'll see that we have the value-added processing plant. You'll see that the water treatment facility and tank, they all have deductibles of $5,000. On scenario A, I removed the value-added building because it's in good condition and no one is actively using it. So I removed that from our insurance coverage, and I also removed the boat washout facility. I also proposed for your consideration increasing the deductible. So for the city office slash what AML-GIA calls their storage, because of our warehouse, the deductible was originally $5,000. I asked them to increase it to $10,000. And then for the water treatment facility, it was at a $5,000 deductible. I increased it to $25,000. For this building, the deductible was originally $5,000. I raised it to $10,000. So what that means is, if something were to occur in this building and the bill was $50,000, our deductible originally was $5,000. So after we paid off that $5,000, we would have met our deductible and had coverage for the remaining charge or the remaining loss. Now I've asked AML-GIA to look at what it would look like if we were raised our deductible to $10,000, which would mean much like for healthcare. You know, healthcare, you have to meet a deductible before you get coverage. We would now be responsible for paying $10,000, and then would have coverage through our insurance company for loss. So this was scenario A. Yep.
If I could just ask a question, Rachel, and
Yes.
that is taking the buildings and different items off of our inventory.
Yes.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
They're not insured.
they're
They are not
So if
insured.
they would burn down,
Right.
anything happened to them,
Right.
we'd be holding the bill.
Right.
Okay, just want clarification. Thank you.
Yep. And so similar changes were also made to our fleet. If you look at our automobiles, those deductibles changed slightly compared to the current coverage that we have. Heavy equipment, same thing. The deductibles changed compared to what we had in place. So that took our current cost of $47,973 and brought it down to $35,769. So over $10,000 cost savings, but it comes at a risk. And so this is a council decision that I'm hoping to get your input on. I've gone before our insurance company, and perhaps they have other recommendations for council's consideration, but I have asked, I'm putting this information before you because if we do not enter into a 3-year agreement with AML-GIA, our insurance bill will be basically $102,000 for the upcoming fiscal year. If we do enter into a 3-year agreement, and that agreement is for your consideration at Monday's meeting, our insurance bill will be, I think it was a little under $97,000. Let me see here. Insurance bill would be $96,776. The way that we could cut that bill even further would be to change the deductible or remove things off of the schedule, basically what's insured. And what Mayor Pro Tempore Rojas brought up is that, yes, if we don't have items on the schedule, it means that we do not have coverage for them. So it is not a fun conversation that I'm bringing before you, but because of the city's current financial standing, I want to present council with options in case you would like to entertain the idea of lowering our insurance bill for FY22, knowing that the city's financial standing, we're going to be having to look at ways to help afford city operations. So I just went through scenario A with you. There's also similar changes in scenario B and C, not too significant though. So I thought that just by going over scenario A with you, this was the most realistic scenario or option that council could consider compared to our current insurance coverage. So I'd like to invite Executive Director Smith as well as Underwriting Manager Briner to chime in and add to the discussion.
This is Kevin. I'm the Executive Director. I want to thank you guys for inviting us to this meeting and for your membership in the organization. Something that I'd like to explain is that you're a member of a pool, and so this is a you share your risk with other cities and school districts in the state of Alaska. So in your general area right now, Homer is in the pool, Kachemak's in the pool, Soldotna's in the pool, Kenai's in the pool, the Kenai Peninsula Borough and School District are in the pool, Seward's in the pool. There's 156 members of the pool that you share your risk with. And it's a shame when prices have to go up. And what we do is we buy coverage with a really big deductible. So for example, for workers' compensation, we provide coverage to statutory limits, which is whatever it's going to cost to fix somebody, that's what we'll pay. But that we've had to make some tough decisions as we go along. And one of those is we have a self-insured retention or a big deductible, if you will, of $750,000 for each and every. So we have to come up as a group, the 156 of us, we have to come up with $750,000 for each and every claim before it goes to our excess carrier. And this year, the problem is in property. It's not that Alaska's property is a big problem. It's just the pricing worldwide is out of sight, and particularly nationwide. This is due largely to the experience that the excess companies have had with hurricanes and wildfires in the down south, and some just significant losses that they feel like they need to capture all the money back as quickly as possible. So we have looked at larger deductibles for our property program. It doesn't seem to pencil out, but we're expecting we're going to have to pay a 40% increase for the property overall, and we're not passing that on to the members. We're taking it to 9% or 9.9% for the rate, and that way those who are in 3-year agreement, we've kept the agreement to keep it under 10% increase, and that's what we're doing with the property. Are there any questions I can answer?
Through the mayor, Kevin, are you planning to also address the risks of increasing a deductible or removing a property off of the schedule for Soldovia Council? Or could you, I should say?
Yeah, I could do that. Can you still hear me? Yeah, I unmuted myself. All right. Well, I think the risks are obvious. That if you increase your deductible, you will have to pay more for the losses. And if you take it off the schedule altogether, you'll not have coverage in the event of a catastrophic, well, in the event of any loss at that particular property. You'd still have liability coverage, you'd still have workers' comp coverage, you'd still have police coverage, but you wouldn't have freeze-up coverage, for example, if it got really cold and the fire system froze up, sprinkler system froze up. I don't see a sprinkler system in this particular building, but I would imagine you have sprinkler systems in some buildings, and maybe not, but that's just an example of something that you wouldn't originally, you might not, it doesn't have to catch on fire and burn to the ground. It could be wind, it could be, like I said, a freeze up, could be broken glass. Those are the kind of risks your coverage currently provides. And I don't pretend to speak for the city. I'm somewhat familiar with the city's financial situation, but you're not really in any different situation than the rest of the cities in the state. And the increase that's contemplated is not as significant, I don't think, as I wouldn't panic. Paul, do you want to add anything?
No, I don't. Want to say I think looking at the coverages here, if you choose to go with a higher deductible, you're going to have more risk. Basically, this is what you're looking at in terms to mitigating the cost. Is the city willing to pick up more risk? And the more risk you take, the lower the cost is going to be. And it's just a matter of trying to determine what's the best trade-off in terms of how much risk you're willing to take and how much you want to pay for the coverage. Otherwise, I don't unless there's some questions, I don't really know we can have any more to add. So.
Rachel, could you repeat the numbers that you put out just a while ago? As I recall, it was something like 102,000 was what our debt was before, or what we had to pay before, and it would reduce it down to 93. Is that right?
So through the mayor, our total contribution amount, if we did not have a 3-year agreement in place with AML-GIA, would be 102,000 basically. And if we did agree to 3 years with AML-GIA, our total contribution would be about 97,000.
Okay, so we're talking about what, $5,000 here.
Right. So that's the first thing is, and that'll be before council for consideration on Monday, is whether or not to enter into that 3-year agreement. The other thing before council for discussion tonight, because it's a work session, so we can't make decisions, but I can just get a temperature check from council, is how willing is council, or what Paul was saying, how much risk is council willing to take to reduce our expense for insurance next year? Because if we remove things off of the schedule or increase the deductible, that'll help save us over $10,000 based on at least one of the scenarios that I put before council. But if you don't want to take that risk, for example, I removed the value added building because people aren't actively using it. I removed the boat wash out facility. So those are two things that have come off of the schedule, and then increase the deductibles for other items. Is council, because this is a council decision, willing to take that risk, or do you want to keep everything as it is currently insured, knowing our current financial standing for FY22?
So the removal of certain things from the inventory and changing the deductible would save us $10,000?
Over 10,000.
Okay. I would support that, but as far as signing a 3-year contract and to gain us about 5,000, that might be something I'd want to think about a little bit more. You know, maybe it might be better to be a little flexible as to our coverage over the next 3 years, maybe looking for other options that wouldn't be available to us if we signed the 3-year contract. I don't know if that 5,000 means that much to us.
So through the mayor, council can elect to put out our coverage through a competitive bid process. So we could create an RFP, request for proposals, and see what bids come in for coverage. I will say I'm biased towards AMLJIA just because aside from covering the city, they're excellent resources for asking policy questions. So like another thing I wanted to bring up in this discussion is I think there's some frustration of insurance requirements and liability waivers. And for example, the harbor kiosks, right now they have a stipulation that the lessee has to provide insurance coverage, and that can deter some applicants from applying to lease those kiosks. But if the city were to remove that responsibility, the city in essence would take on the full risk of if something went wrong while that person was using that kiosk. So if someone got injured, tripped, fell off that step, someone set the kiosk on fire on accident, the city would be on the hook for the coverage versus somebody else having a separate insurance policy in place that would help reduce the city's liability. So AMLJA has helped advise me on situations like that so that I can ensure that I'm acting in the best interest of the city. There are other insurance companies out there that could they provide that same level of service? I'm sure they could. Soldovia has been with AMLJA since 1997. So we have a relationship with them and they work with municipalities across the state of Alaska. So I do think that they are a great source for our insurance. But if council wanted to, you could put out an RFP to see if there's a more competitive rate out there for insurance.
When do we have to make the decision about the 3 years?
That's a great question. I'll pass back to Kevin.
I would say by the first of the fiscal year.
Well, actually, Kevin, this is Paul. Technically, you could actually make the decision after the first of the fiscal year, and but basically obviously we'd encourage you to make it before then, but if for some reason you wanted to delay on that, we can still deal with that even if it does come in after the beginning, after July 1. So.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, the true deadline wouldn't be till like several months down the road. So.
Sorry, Paul, did you say several months down the road?
Yeah. I mean, you obviously you're not going to get the credit until you make that decision, but you could put that off if you have to.
So just so I'm clear, the city could sign up for a year right now with AMLJIA. And then if council wanted to look into putting out our coverage out to bid, we could do that. And if things don't come in favorably or as competitive as what AMLJIA has offered, we can then sign that 3-year agreement.
Okay. No. That's not what I'm saying. The way our the pool works is in order to leave the pool to go to another company or another, we have there's a 6-month requirement of notice. Basically, if you leave without giving notice, there's a financial penalty. So that's the way the pool is obviously it's set up. So you would technically have the next 6 months to make a decision on whether or not you want to go out to bid for this, but that would be for FY 23, not FY 22. That wouldn't be for this year. So you have up until December 31st of this year to decide whether or not you want to go out to bid for the next year's coverage. And obviously, if you decide to do that, then you would send us notice that you're going to do that, and then you can go do your RFP. If you decide not to do that, you could then sign the 3-year agreement and get the credit for. And basically, the thing with the 3-year agreement, you get it's a 5% credit on the contribution cost, and there also in that agreement is agreement that we will not increase the rate that you guys pay by more than 10% in any one year of those 3 years. So each year you get a 5% credit in those 3 years, and again you get that agreement that we don't increase the rate. Now, if your exposure increases, if your payroll or increases, or if you add another building or add vehicles, or whatever, that could increase the price more than the 10%. But in terms of the rate, it would not be increased by more than 10% in any of those years. Any questions?
Well, I have a question, but I don't know if it's really, well, I guess it has to do with the money. So I think when we're talking about removing the value-added plant, I think we have to think about other things. What's inside the value-added plant and what's around it. I mean, God forbid, if that thing catches on fire and everything in it and around it catches on fire, we're up, you know what, without a paddle. And then the second thing, do we want to take that chance? Or do we want to clear everything out that's in the value-added plant and around it to not take a chance on anything else happening with that? And then the second thing is, unfortunately, and this is no offense to you guys, insurance companies aren't very warm and fuzzy, and we have not had good luck with the last thing that went out for bid, the health insurance. That didn't do well for us. So now we have to look for somebody else, or we've already found it or something. But I don't want to have to go through that personally every year or whatever when they raise their rates, that we have to put it out for bid again to look for something else. So there's a few things definitely to think about. Thanks. That's all I've got.
Yeah, you bet. I think you made some good points, Bobby, and I think that's something the council needs to consider. I'm a little bit concerned about taking our inventory off our insurance. Wind damage, as we all know, we've had some tremendous windstorms. And so we've got properties that are in good shape, value added for one, and the boat station down there. I would hate to see a windstorm come out, blow something away, and then the city set back. I am in favor of increasing our deductible. I think AML, GIA has always been very fair to Seldovia. I think it's a good system. I'm not opposed to looking at others, but I think they've always been a great asset to be hand in hand in a partnership with. They've always been good to us throughout our tenure with them. So, I mean, doing business, having insurance, as we all know, is on our own personal items. You do it just in case. That's what insurance is all about. So we just need to figure out what risk we want to be at. And as far as I'm concerned, I think it would be a bit, I'm not sure what the word is, not quite forthright to end up taking items that are the value add and properties off the insurance and then sit at a loss. So I'm not in favor of doing that. And I know we're at a budget squeeze, but I think there's pretty serious things we need to think about. All right, thank you. Anyone else on council? Yeah, John.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of taking anything off of the insurance. I'm willing to take the higher risk for the deductible. That doesn't bother me. And I kind of like AML, JI for they're consistent and they help us a lot. Thank you.
Can I ask? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pearlie.
Pearlie, go ahead.
Yeah,
Your mic.
I'm just wondering at the, you said a 10% increase every year. We start out in 97,000. Does it, what would that, the following year add up to 100,000? And the following year, another 10%? Is that what I understood?
Well,
This is
the
Kevin.
10% this is Paul again. The 10% would be that's the absolute maximum of the rate increase that you would see. Obviously, we're not here to make money. We're not an insurance company that's looking to make profit for their stockholders. We're just here. We want to be around to be able to pay the claims that our members have. And so, obviously, what we're trying to do is try to keep the costs as stable as possible. Like I say, that 10% is, like I say, that's a maximum. That is not you're going to get a guaranteed increase 10% every year. No, I would not say that.
So how much of a percentage of increase do we see every year? What did it increase from last year to this year?
Overall, actually, overall we're looking at that. In terms of an actual rate increase, I think it was actually, Kevin, you remember? I think it was about 5%. Because if you
I think it's
actually,
about 3, Paul.
yeah, if you look at the numbers, the workers' comp rates actually went down this year. The liability rates were pretty flat. I think they might have gone down very slightly. And it's the property where you're seeing the increase. And again, that is basically due to there was some I think there was some valuation changes, because again we pay replacement cost for your buildings. If your building burns down, totally gone, we're going to pay what it costs to replace it. So we have to keep those replacement costs updated. So there was an increase, I think, on some of the valuations on the buildings this year. Then obviously there was a rate increase on the property, just because, like Kevin was explaining, the costs that we're seeing on our end for our excess and reinsurance for the property is just, it's the largest I've ever seen in my, I've been with AMLJIA now for since 2005, and this is the largest increase I've ever seen on the property, on the excess. I was shocked when I saw it.
And that's a statewide increase or Seldovia increase?
Basically, I think Kevin was trying to explain, when we, on our property coverage, obviously, we don't have enough money to be able to cover all our members' property in case something really dramatic happens. So what we do is we buy what they call excess property coverage. We take a first percentage of I think it's the first $500,000 of a loss on a property loss. But if anything over and above that, it goes to our excess company that it's another insurance company that we buy the coverage from. And like I said, this year the rate for the coverage increased. It was close to 40%. That's for all our members. So again, and like I said, we did not increase our property rates that much.
So what's your projection? Is that going to keep going up every year? 40% is a pretty good jump. Is that going to keep happening, or just all COVID related?
I don't think that's going to happen. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but again, this is the most dramatic I've seen. Hopefully, if we don't have a whole bunch of hurricanes and wildfires and other dramatic property catastrophes down in the lower 48 this year, we won't see that kind of an increase. Again, it's hard to tell, but again, this was something I was surprised. The largest increase I've seen. So, I can't see where they can keep doing this year over year. You'd end up, pricing people, beginning to cost to where nobody could afford it. So.
Are you done, Pearlie?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pearlie. I think, George, just a second. I think the reality is that we're looking at variables that are out of our control, that being forest fires down in the States, hurricanes, that all influence the insurance. And that's where the big hit came this past year. Just like your personal private house insurance, it goes up, not based on what happens in Soldovia, but what's based around the country and who they invest with. George, go ahead.
One thing we want to remember is none of this property is encumbered. So Rachel has cleverly picked things that we can live without. So if the value added building gets struck by lightning and it's reduced to rubble, all we got to do is clean it up. We don't have to replace it. So taking it off the inventory is not as dangerous as we're thinking. We don't have to rebuild it. Same thing with the boat wash facility. We can live without that. Yeah, we'd like to have it and it could be replaced when we can, but we're not taking that big a risk as far as taking those two facilities off of our inventory.
Madam Mayor.
Sure.
John has his hand up, then Harmony will get you. Oops, I didn't have I'm sorry, Harmony, I didn't have my mic on. John will go first.
I'm against taking stuff off of the insurance, and particularly the value added building, just for the simple fact that it was paid for by the state and the federal government. And to take it off the insurance and something happen and it gets destroyed, there's going to be repercussions for it one way or the other. It's like throwing away money. So again, I'm against taking stuff off the insurance because that gets found out by everybody and something bad will happen to everything you don't have insured. That's just the way the world is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Harmony, go ahead, please.
Hi. Yeah. I kind of want to make sure that because that's a grant funded structure, even though it's not currently in use, it's not fit to be used at this point, all those things. And I do understand that we're in a bind. I just want to make sure that we are not violating any type of agreement with whoever we got that grant from by not insuring that building, because all those things that George said are true. We know it's not encumbered. It's not something that we're doing anything with, but we did receive grant funding for that structure, and we should be held to some sort of accountability for it. But as far as the rest of it goes, I feel like the higher deductible rate is the more reasonable approach, rather than just taking whole structures off of our insurance at this time.
Thank you, Harmony. Rachel?
Paul and Kevin, just to clarify, if the city were to keep all structures insured and then somehow secure a tenant for one of them and required that the tenant carry their own insurance, could we then remove that structure off of our insurance policy and then receive a refund or a lower rate because we will have no longer had that structure on the city schedule?
This is Paul. Yeah, I don't know if you'd be able to get a tenant to to cover your building, because that, you know, you're the owners and you have the insurable interest in it. If you could do that, yeah, obviously, if you decide to take off any of these buildings, you would get you know, if it's during the year, you would get you know, a refund for that. It would be prorated from whatever time, you know, however much time you actually had the coverage for. So.
Thank you.
George?
I think we'd be silly to try to require the customer's not going to be able to insure it anywhere near the cost that we have, since we're a bigger entity. It is charging more rent, that's all. I'd never say a word about insurance. I'd just say the rent is X plus Y, and we've got our money covered for the insurance. It's the way to do it.
Thank you. Good point. Anyone else on council about item B1, AMN LGIA, where we're at? This is all for discussion that's going to come to us on Monday, correct?
The 3-year agreement will.
Okay.
And so council will consider a 3-year agreement, and then council budgeted for insurance for FY22. So you already gave your permission. So it's more, we'll look at, I can bring back the numbers once I ask Paul to put the structures back on the schedule, but with reduced deductibles, so that council has an understanding of what that would look like. So that'll be my homework, is to just look at reducing the deductibles. And another way too that you can impact the cost of our annual contribution is you can reduce the value of the building. So that's what some of the other scenarios did, is taking, I can't remember what I did, maybe the Gateway Pavilion, I think it's initially valued at $530,000. And I think in one of these scenarios, I decreased it.
Is that a replacement value or is that an assessed value?
A replacement value. So
Okay.
yeah, for scenario C, I reduced that to $450,000 with a $10,000 deductible, to see how that could influence our annual contribution amount. So I'll continue to work with AMLGIA now that we know we want to keep everything on the schedule, to see if there's a way we can still have some savings on our annual contribution, because without doing anything, council will be looking at a $97,000 bill for insurance coverage. And with the current financial standing of the city, we need to find savings somewhere, or additional revenue somewhere, to help us afford that if no other changes are made.
Do you feel like you've gotten input from the council enough to move forward? But I see, John, you would like to say something again.
Well, I did have one question on the deductible. Is we signed a 3-year contract. Is that deductible for every occurrence, or is that for the duration of the 3 years on that?
This is Paul. The deductible is basically it would be per loss, and you would be able to change. I mean, if you went with a higher deductible for this this upcoming fiscal year, and then you decided next year that you wanted to, maybe for some reason you got more money or whatever, and you want to lower those you can change the deductibles like in the different years. They're not set in stone for the 3 years. That's
Okay,
something
yeah,
that can be changed.
Rachel.
But to clarify, Paul, what you were saying is that the deductible is per occurrence.
Yeah, if for some reason, say there was a loss where 2 of your buildings were involved, there's only one deductible. It's whatever the highest number. If you had, say, one building had a $5,000 deductible and the other building had a $10,000 deductible, there would be one deductible, $10,000. That's it. There's not the 5 and the 10.
Yeah. I mean, like say something happened here, and then a year later, something else happened again. Is that
Yep.
deductible per occurrence?
Yes. So
Preference,
yeah, if he had a loss, if you had a loss, say next month, and then 2 months later had another loss, it's a separate loss, it's a separate deductible, so yeah, you'd be, each time that deductible would apply for each occurrence.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on the
Oh.
deductible if I
Yes,
could. This is
please.
Kevin. It's been my experience that communities try to save money on the deductible and often get bit in the butt by that. And so I just want to say, use caution when you start raising your deductible. It's a good way to save money, but it's also a good way to get bit. The way the wind has been blowing in Seldovia recently, I would be a little concerned about a tree falling on something.
Thank you, Kevin. Pearlie?
Yeah, are there incentives if we go for a year without any claims? That's probably not ever going to happen, but like automobile insurance, you safe driver discounts and all that kind of stuff. Does through you folks, is there incentive programs that can lower our rate?
Hurley, this is Kevin. That's an excellent question. And the answer is yes. There's a number of incentive programs to kind of reduce your losses, and we'll help you put those into place. So for example, there's the loss control incentive plan, which they're sort of retooling right now. But it's a jump through the hoops kind of plan. So you don't even have, it's not even performance based. It's an activities based program. And if you do this and you do that and you do that, you could reduce your overall cost by 5%.
By how much percent? I didn't quite hear that.
5.
Thanks.
And then Kevin, on that note, because the city insures events, like we have a fireworks display show, we insure, we have a parade, we insure activities at a building used by the borough. If right now we have our contribution amount, but if any of those activities generated claims, that would cause our contribution amount to increase, correct?
Probably not. Some of those sound like peripheral coverages that we pass on to an insurance company. And again, we're a self-insurance program for cities, boroughs, and schools. So it sounds to me like you're talking about stuff that's not pooled for necessarily. Paul, can you help me here?
Yeah, in terms of, if you have losses, there is something we do called experience rating, but it only applies on the workers' compensation and the general liability coverage. And that's all based on, and that is based on your experience, your loss history. It's a look back over the past 5 years, and we have an actuary that does this, and it's a comparison of your losses versus how much. Basically, it's a comparison of how much contribution you are in the pool and how many losses you have, and if you are, if you're lower, if you have fewer losses than the average, then you get a credit. If you have more losses than the average, then you end up paying more. But that's only applies on the workers' compensation and the general liability. Otherwise, that's the only time in terms of if you have losses that it could affect your future contribution costs.
Okay, that's great to hear, because the city has been trying to implement a special events policy, and one of the requirements that's listed in our informal application is insurance coverage that identifies things like workers' comp, general liability, and it's difficult for individuals as well as some groups to ensure coverage. We also had a group that was interested in using our Gateway Pavilion, which is a public building for a farmer's market. And then there is the concern with regular occurring use. There could be accidents or higher chance of risk. So if council were just to grant individuals that want to have events or groups that want to have events coverage on our policy, and claims resulted or accidents resulted from that, we wouldn't see a high, or it sounds like a significant increase on our insurance coverage amount.
Oh, this is Paul. Also, we do have a program. I think Kevin was kind of touching on that. There's a special events program that we can access. It's actually through an actual other insurance company. If you have someone or some entity that wants to use one of your facilities for an event, and we're not talking like something that's going to be, ongoing over several months or whatever. We're talking like, a couple of days or a week or whatever. If they have an event that, where they want to use one of your facilities, you can contact me and I can see about getting a quote for that, for what it would cost for that, for that entity to get the special events coverage. And it's basically, it's general liability coverage for that, for the person or entity. If they don't have their own coverage or can't get coverage, we can provide that just for that special event. You just need to contact me and let me know. Give me a little heads up lead time, and we can see if we can get that quoted. Now,
And would that be on the city's policy still though? Like if something happened?
This is written through an entirely through a different insurance company. We have through our broker, they have this program set up, and many of our members use it. It's like if you have somebody that wants to host an event in one of the city buildings, and they're maybe it's just sometimes it will have somebody who's as simple as like a quilting club that wants to have have their some event in your building, and they don't have insurance. They're just a club. They just but you want to make sure that if something happens, that something serious happens, they're going to be pointing the finger at the city because they figure the city's got the money. Well, this way you can purchase they can purchase this coverage. It covers them for the general liability, and it's generally the cost is not excessive. Again, it all depends. Basically, it depends on what type of event is happening and how many days it's going to be and how many people are involved, and that's generally where they figure up the cost. So.
Okay, that's great to hear because something I was curious about too is we, on every year basis, are insuring a fireworks display show, and so we have certificates of coverage that come in our packets, and so I wasn't sure if that was also increasing our annual contribution amount by insuring these events.
No, like I said, that wouldn't increase your coverage. The way like I said, the way the liability works for your coverage, for the AMLJIA coverage, it's all based off the payroll. So unless you're increasing your payroll or hiring more people, then it wouldn't increase that cost.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Bobby, go ahead.
I just have one more question. I don't, unless I'm missing it, our current coverage that you have here for FY22 current, listing all the buildings and the deductibles, what kind of savings would we get, or would we get anything if we kept all the coverage, all our stuff, but just increase the deductible?
Through the mayor, I shared earlier that that's my homework that I'll present to council at a later
okay.
date.
Okay.
I have to work with
I guess I didn't
AMLJ
hear
on
that.
that.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Go ahead.
This is Paul. Actually, I think I can help you out there because I did run a few numbers in terms of just the property coverage, and now this is this would be fairly extreme. If you went on your property coverage currently, everything's at a $5,000 deductible. If you went to a $25,000 deductible, the savings is about $7,000. That I remember I did run some numbers on that, and I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It's about $7,000 savings if you go everything to a $25,000 deductible. That's just to give you a little heads up there.
Do you have a question?
Go ahead, Pearlie.
Yeah, if, say we got somebody in the value added building, do we keep insuring that, or does the leasee have to prove he's got insurance that covers the building? And if that's so, can the city drop that while we have a leasee and get our reimbursement from AML?
Early, this is Kevin.
Yeah.
I would discourage that highly. If you've got people moving in and out of your building, your liability is covered by your payroll. And that hasn't changed just because you had somebody move into the building. But if you were to take the building off the property schedule, it's more likely to, well, I can't say it's more likely to get injured when there's people, when it's occupied, because that's not necessarily true. But I've seen that happen a time or two, where the tenant left the water running and it flooded, and we had to replace the subfloor on the whole structure, and it was expensive.
But wouldn't that be the insurance that we would require somebody to have full coverage for the building to lease it out?
Well, this is where John was saying he thought that that would be a little bit cumbersome for the renting of the buildings. So you're the owner, the city's the owner, but you have to, there's the insurable interest essentially, and the tenant doesn't have an insurable interest in the building.
I think Pearlie, what the conversation was earlier is that it would be on us to increase the lease amount to cover insurance. It sounded like us keeping the insurance on the building worked better in the city's interest, and then just pass that on to the leasee and add that to the cost of their rental or whatever it might be, their lease of the building.
So with these kiosks, I think I understood that we had talked about the renter or leasee insuring it without us covering it. Was that right?
Rachel, if you wanted to respond to that.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Morrison, we talked about with the kiosks, having them have their own insurance for the kiosks. So that way, if there was a claim, it wouldn't hit the city. They would be responsible for it. So we wouldn't be on the hook for, say it burned down, having to pay for it with our insurance. So it's like a best management practice to have your tenant have separate insurance. I think the difference with your question with the value added building, because we asked that earlier, is tenants don't have an insured interest. They don't own the building. So you can require additional insurance coverage, but it's still in our best interest to maintain, because we're the owner, maintain the AML-JIA coverage.
Thank you.
Bobby, yes.
Okay, I don't want to beat this to death, but I just don't quite get it. Maybe these guys can help me. So let's talk about the kiosks. So they're insured under our policy. Now, you have said if we get a renter, they are also required to have additional insurance.
It's a best management practice for them to have additional coverage. So the city of Homer, or sorry, the city of Soldovia would not be the the certificate holder. Or sorry, let me back up there. It would be beneficial or best management practice for a tenant in the kiosk to have separate insurance that lists the city as a certificate holder. So that way, if an incident occurred in the kiosks, it wouldn't hit us. It wouldn't be a claim filed against us. It would hit the tenant's insurance policy first. So Kevin and Paul, if you would like to
So the,
Jump in.
so when no one's in them, then obviously they're still on our insurance roll. And then if anything happens, then we would be responsible for that. So if we get a tenant, I just, for some reason, I just can't get that straight in my head. We get a tenant, then whatever happens, say they burn the building down or somebody trips and falls or whatever, then their insurance would take care of that. Okay, so okay, well, those are questions I'm going to save. I've got some other stuff along with that for another day. Okay.
Kevin or Paul, would you like to jump in and maybe try to clarify that to council?
Yeah, I'd
of
like
what
to
you
take a
heard?
Yes,
stab
this
at
is,
it.
this
Go
is
ahead, Paul.
Yeah, okay, I think we're talking apples and oranges here. Yes, if you're renting out a building to somebody else, if somebody's leasing one of your kiosks or whatever, or any of the buildings, you want them to have liability coverage. So if something happens to, somebody comes into the building and trips and falls and breaks their leg or whatever, you want them to have liability coverage, and you want to require that. The buildings themselves, however, that's your responsibility. That you own them. You have the insurable interest in those. So you need to have the property coverage on the buildings themselves. Now, the suggestion that you make in the cost of the lease, you include that cost for the property insurance coverage. So you just build that into your lease cost, so that when somebody's renting one of your buildings, then they're paying the cost for the property insurance, but it's still your property insurance coverage because you own the buildings and you have the insurable interest. Otherwise, if you're trying to get one of the tenants to cover the property, well, what happens when one of them moves out or when they cancel a policy, and you don't know that about that would be you don't want to have that. You want to have the control. It's your buildings, your insurable interest. You need to have I think you really need to have the property coverage. Now, again, like I said, the requiring them to have liability insurance, yes, that's is essential, because then, like I said, if something were to happen where it's the tenant's fault and the city has no negligence involved in it, then the tenant who has insurance to cover that and to keep the city out of it there.
Yeah, I think the clarification we've got here, there's property insurance and then there's a liability insurance. Two
Yep,
separate. That's where the
exactly.
apples and oranges comes in. If that
Yep.
makes sense, Bobby?
Well, sort of, but so you're saying that if we get somebody in there that has liability insurance and the place burns down while they're selling whatever, it's
Then
the
then your
insurance-
AMLJIA coverage would cover that.
okay.
We would pay if it happens to be the tenant's fault. If they set the building on fire, then we might go after them and their liability coverage to recoup that money.
Oh,
But
you would go after them. Okay, so just one more quick question. So do you have that liability coverage for someone, say, that wanted to lease those kiosks for like a 4-month period? we get an insurance for liability through you guys, or do they have to look for their own? Because apparently that's an issue from what I understand.
Unfortunately, no, we wouldn't be able to provide that kind of coverage for them. They would need to go to to an insurance agent and see about procuring the liability coverage through them. So
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, yep. All right, thank you, Bobby. Anyone else? George, yes.
Wouldn't the second party insurance company subrogate their claim and come after the city anyway? Isn't that the way it's going to work in the real world?
it's
George, this
it's
is
possible.
Kevin.
It depends on the circumstances. I mean, if if they do, we would be here to then it's our job to defend the city against that. And if there was negligence on the city's part, and then we would that's why you have your liability insurance coverage. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else on council have a question for Kevin or Paul or city manager about this discussion item? Do we feel like we've given direction to the city manager, or does she feel like we've given her direction?
I've gotten great input, and I wanted to especially thank Kevin and Paul for hanging in there with us. We're just trying our best to operate the city and protect ourselves from as much risk as possible, and we're glad you've been on our team so far. And we'll have the resolution for the 3-year agreement with AMLJ on Monday's agenda for consideration.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, council members.
Thank you very much for being a part of our discussion today, Kevin and Paul.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you
Thank
Monday.
you. You're welcome.
Okay, moving on, folks, to item B2, which is next steps for the Seldovia's value-added building. Oh, boy.
All right, council, I'm going to share my screen here with you. All right, if you go to page 22 in your packet, it'll take you to a value added grant breakdown white paper. And when I first came on board with the city, I was working on the city of Seldovia's capital project submittal to the legislature and was trying to understand the value added building. And because it's something that we've applied for funding, capital funding from the state in the past. And so I found this white paper that was written by Seldovia's former city manager, Todd Larson. And because of the statement that he had in there, I was under the impression that the value added building could not be used for anything else other than a processing plant or ice house. You'll see in number 4 in his white paper, it said, as it is currently written, it's clear that the intent of the grant funding is for the design and construction of a processing plant, ice house, and an area for a small retail space. If the city of Seldovia uses this space for any other purpose, there is a fair amount of risk the city will incur. If the city of Seldovia utilizes the funding in any other manner than its original intent, the city risks being required to pay back the unused funds and/or pay back the entirety of the grant amount of $565,000. Another unwritten risk that the council should consider is the damage the city would do to the relationship with the granting agencies. Not conforming to the rules may impact our future grant applications. So when I read that, it definitely colored my perspective that we couldn't do anything else with that building. But to be sure, I emailed, let's see, doesn't look as though, unfortunately, that email made it in. Let's see. Oh, here it is. If you go to page 19 in the packet, you'll see an email discussion between myself and the state trying to get clarification on that. And indeed, the city of Seldovia can change the intent for the use of that building. So it does not have to be for a processing plant or an ice house or retail space, but there's some next steps that we need to do. We would need to contact our local delegation, so Senator Stevens or Representative Stutz's office, and ask them to review the proposed use, because the one stipulation with the grant that does apply, it's listed there at Article 34, public purposes. It has to be used for a public purpose that fits the definition that was in the grant agreement. So I was trying to ask them questions like, well, say we get an economic development proposal where the tenant was going to start their own private business, but it's going to create X amount of jobs in Seldovia. Would that count? And so there needs to be some discussion with the state on that, but there is opportunity to work with them to allow us to have different uses occur in that building. So that was one thing I wanted to discuss with council, is just sharing with you that yes, we can change the use. The other thing I want to share with you or discuss with you is how do you want to go about getting that building ready for a different use? So if you go to page 24 in your packet, this is the paper that we've been providing the legislature over the past few years about the building. Previous administrations have developed it. I don't know what exactly that building needs to complete firsthand myself, but it's an unfinished building where we've been telling the legislature we need trench drains and appropriate underground plumbing, installation of data and a telecommunication system, concrete flooring, boiling and heating units, carpentry work, water and sewer installation, and the continuation of electrical components. So I know council is aware it's an unfinished building, and these are some of the items. I'm not sure if there are more, but these are some of the items that we need to consider when leasing out that space. If you go to page 25 in your packet, we told the legislature this year that if they gave us $760,000, it would complete the value-added plant, the building. I didn't come up with that number. That's the number that administration or prior administrations had been using. If you go to page 28 in your packet, you'll see that in 2018, the city asked the legislature for over $1.3 million to finish that building. And then on page 27, that's where the $760,000 came from. It shows the resolution with the application. So I'm not sure how much money needs to be invested into that building for it to be completed. 760,000 or over 1.3 million. When considering how we could move forward with that building, I know there's an opportunity where the city could look at public-private partnerships. I asked the city clerk to look into when was the last time, or has this building ever been offered for lease? Have we ever put it out through an RFP process for someone being interested in the building? And she couldn't find anything in our records that showed we've actually put this out to lease. And maybe it could be because we were unsure if the use could change, and because we knew how much money this thing apparently is going to need in order to be fixed. It's an unfinished building. So there are a few different ways council could go about this, or the city could go about this. You could hire a realtor to represent the city and market the building, and then have an RFP process so that people can put out bids for a lease to secure a lease with the city. The public-private partnership component of that lease could be that they agree to finish it. But if they agree to finish it, most likely they would say, we're not going to pay you rent because we're going to have to put apparently $760 to $1.3 million into this building. So I just wanted to start that discussion with council, because we could try to lease it as is and make it very clear that this is not complete. It's not ready to go. They would have to put a lot of upfront capital into this building, but that the city would be open to negotiating with them. So instead of a 25 to 30-year lease, the city might be interested in a 40-year lease with you. And instead of having you pay rent upfront the first 5 years or 10 years, whatever the appraised value of the building is for a lease, you won't have to pay that because you've invested getting the building up to snuff, because right now it's not being used. So those were a few ideas I had for the value added building. Another idea was, in addition to considering leasing out the value added building, council could include the lot next to it so that they would have space for parking, storing their materials. You could also consider leasing out the boat storage area, possibly. So moving everyone to one storage lot and then providing them more land if a business needed that. So there are a lot of opportunities for council to consider, but that building is on my mind. I walk past it every single day just thinking, what are we going to do with that? And so it would be nice to get a temperature check from council. Are you interested in pursuing leasing it as is? Or do you want the city to try and focus on getting $360 to $1.3 million worth in grants to fix it? Do we want to hire an engineer to look at the building to tell us exactly what it needs that's essential to be fixed so we have a better cost estimate? A lot of different options.
John, your light's been on. Go ahead.
I don't foresee anybody wanting to build or finish anything in the next year or so, as the cost of building materials has went up over 800%. What cost 110 or 10,000 last year is 110,000 this year in cost. That's before you start driving any nails or doing anything. It's just the cost of the material. When the building was built, the city was supposed to put the sewer lines and water lines into it. I don't know if that was done, but the cost, that 750,000, that was for years ago. The cost has went up quite a bit. So I wouldn't plan on like next year. In the future, yeah, I would go with trying to get somebody to finish it for a break. But even if I was a multimillionaire, I wouldn't want to take that on just because of the outrageous price of stuff. It'll go down in a year or two. But, that would be, I think the city, we were supposed to put the sewer and water in, and I don't know if that's been done. The city crew was going to put that in. Thank you.
George.
Well, we kind of have the horse before the cart. Before we spend a nickel there, I think we need to know what it's going to be used for. Otherwise, we'll end up with the wrong stuff in there. Need to find a potential tenant and see what he needs, and then we could talk about investing money to finish the thing. But John's absolutely right. Right now, the cost of materials is so high that it's prohibitive. But on the other side of that coin, if someone were interested in the space, I think your ideas of rolling what the cost of finishing having the client finish the building and roll that cost into a long-term lease, whereas lease payments wouldn't start for a number of years or whatever, just some kind of way to give him credit for having finished our building. But again, we really need to know what, if he's going to have office space in there, you got to have a finished interior. If he's going to be a warehouse, you really don't need that. So we really need to know where the thing is going before we could think about investing more money in it.
Pearlie.
Yeah, I'm all for getting it on the market, as is, negotiate with some lease agreements as far as repairing it and getting it up to snuff. I believe there is city sewer and water stubbed in there, if I'm not mistaken. I know electricity's hooked up in there. But with the right entity, you know, you don't have to bring that whole building up to snuff. You could do it in sections, but that would take some leniency on the city's part. If we as is and told somebody within a year they've got to have it up to snuff, I don't think that would fly. But somebody that would be interested in that building, I think, would be a long-term investment. It's not something they're going to come in there and try to throw something up in a year, but they could start small. I myself would sort of maybe be interested in part of it. So maybe whoever gets it as is could lease out some of the sections, build a wall, and that's your part and this is my part, and that would be up to the leasee, I think. But the potential's there for all. We need a few businesses in town that I believe, without trying to mess with the grant, we could probably call them something to do with fishing. If it was one section of that was made into a little area to construct a skiff, I mean, that's got something to do with fishing. So I think there's ways around all that stuff, and I'm for opening it up. What's been tying our hands for years is it's got to be something to do with fisheries. Seems like lots of times we get ideas and then the ball gets dropped and it never gets pursued. And I see you're pursuing stuff, and that's what needs to happen. We need to have somebody holding the reins that will do that legwork. What do we need to get away from this fisheries part of this grant? There's got to be ways to do it. And I think as is, and be lenient. If somebody starts a business in there, the whole town gets a little kickback from it. There's people going to that business, they got to get lunch, they got to go sleep somewhere. It's a crying shame. I was down there today looking around that building. There's a stack of plywood, 3/4 plywood that sells for, I've heard, anywhere from $60 to $100 a sheet, sitting in the weather, no protection, slowly going to crap. It's, I didn't count the sheets, but there's got to be 25, 30 sheets there. There's a stack of lumber over there that is just going to crap. I picked up one 2x4, it snapped right in half with punk. We need to start taking care of what we got. We worry about other people in this town that don't look all that great around their house. We need to clean up our own yard before we start worrying about other people. We need revenue, and it's all around us. We're just keep putting a blind eye to it. So yeah, we need to get that building on the market. Maybe there is somebody out there who wants to do it as is. We got to give them the chance. Thanks.
Thank you, Pearlie. I think that's a really interesting idea to get that building on the market and advertise. And it may take a good year because of the cost of lumber right now and building. So it is, we're in a hard place in that, do we have a direction for that building, or do we need someone to come forward to us and bring proposals to us and look at them from there? The building, I mean, we had it geared up. We thought it was going to be a processor in there. So we put, I think, 220s there, whether or not water and sewer. So I think there's some groundwork that needs to be done to find out what do we have there the opportunity of someone coming here, marketing it, coming here and saying, oh, I might be interested in doing this or that. We need to get them forward in that podium and proposing to us what they would think about doing for the community and what they could do with that building. That lumber you're talking about, I think that plywood probably is left over from the when they built the plant up on top of the hill. And I totally agree with you. I brought it up several times. It's sitting out there rotting. So there's lost revenue. If we're not going to use it, then we need to sell it and it's worth a bundle. So I think it's a real interesting idea that we do need to move forward. And I guess kind of in our brains, we don't have to know what it's going to be. We need to hear proposals of what it could be. I don't know if it's really in our purview to say this is what it's going to be. Standard electrical run wiring through there. Maybe that's what we could do. But anyhow, I think we do, like everyone on this council thinks we need to move forward and do something with that building. And to have it broke up into stalls for multiple people, excellent. But I think the possibility of getting $760,000 from anybody in the state, we haven't had much luck. And unless Stutes and Stevens can give us point us in the right direction, it's been rough trying to find funding. But thanks for being on top of this.
May I
Bobby.
chime in, Madam Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Harmony.
So I guess I don't have anything new to add. It's just kind of an echo of what everybody else is saying. I think it's really great that you're pursuing this, Rachel. I was just wondering if we could do kind of double dip on our pursuits, maybe try for a couple of grants while it's on the market with, I mean, I don't know if that's reasonable, but could we consider some sort of lease agreement where we, instead of them paying rent, we give them a 10 or 15-year lease agreement with the language that they finish the structure, you know, so if it's 700 and change to finish the structure, I don't know how that would break down to, like, you know, if we were going to rent it for 2,500 a month plus whatever, you know, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but I agree with everything Pearlie said. Our lots are so scattered and so cluttered and just unnecessarily so. We have so much property that we could really work towards leasing out. I'm not in favor of selling all of our city lots, but to pursue some sort of industrial leasing opportunity with this structure would be great. I mean, even if we looked at just a bare bones, you know, water, sewer, and floor in order to make that some sort of warehouse for somebody who wants to pay rent on it, or a what's the word I'm looking for, like a boat shop type structure. I don't know. I think that we should just be really flexible, pursue changing our language on the grant. Because I like what Rachel said about being leery of burning bridges with grant opportunities. You know, we were awarded a substantial sum, and we don't want to take ourselves out of the running for future grants by not complying with what we applied for. So I would really like to follow the red tape on that and just be sure that we're being honest with what we're doing, but making that structure viable for somebody to do something with. So yeah, I know I didn't add anything new, but I really like this line of thinking.
Thank you, Harmony. Rachel, did you have something?
Oh, Councilmember Payton, I just wanted to share with you through the mayor that was actually the former city manager, Todd Larson, that had said that. I'm not actually sure if that would be the case or not, if it could hurt our relationship with the grant agencies, because I would also say it's pretty heartbreaking to see it sitting empty and unused. So if the city could come up with a viable solution to this challenge, that could also be a very good thing. So yeah, that was something that City Manager Larson had said, but I'm not sure how that would hold up nowadays, since the building was constructed many years ago, and we're still waiting to get an occupant in it. Thank you so much for your comments.
Okay. Bobby, yes.
Yeah,
I just want to make a couple comments on the value-added plant. In my opinion, it's been a very poorly managed grant from beginning to where we are now. That being said, I kind of like the idea of just putting it out there and trying to get somebody to see if anybody's interested. We're never going to know that unless we put it out there. So I totally agree with that. And Pearlie, in my mind, I totally agree with you. I think we have too much junk on all our properties. Some may be worth something, some may be not. But in my thoughts, this is where the land management plan comes in. Once we take stock of everything we've got, my thought was that we also take stock of what's on that land, whether it's outside or inside a building or what, so that we have a clearer picture of what all we have. Because I really am curious about those lots out the road. There has got to be so much stuff out there. It's got to be. Who knows? Maybe we could have a huge yard sale.
Good.
You know, make a bunch of money.
There you go.
Thanks.
Anyone else about this item? City manager, you have to, oh, I'm sorry. George?
Just where are we as far as our inventory of the lands we have? I mean, what in the world's taken so long to, I mean, am I being naive?
We just survived the budget, and then the budget was adopted the last meeting in May. And then I was gone for a couple weeks, and this is my second week back. We
Okay.
have the inventory of properties from the borough, but it has always been in my mind the end of summer, beginning of fall, and I think that was communicated with council too as the timeline.
Okay. That's how long it takes. That's how long it takes, I guess. It seems like we should have at least some idea of what we have.
You know what we can do, George, on our own, and that's to go to KPB Viewfinder or the web
Yeah.
and go there, and we can look up all the city properties, see how much they're worth, and do our own homework and kind of say, oh, okay, I didn't know there's a lot there and a lot here. So go on the KPB View basic viewer, and you can pull that up and find everybody's property in town.
Yeah, I've used the
Yeah,
site before.
That's
Thank
kind
you.
of a nice little homework item. Yes.
And if I may, Madam Chair, I also just sent that out to a constituent earlier today per their request at the last meeting. So I do have a nice spreadsheet from the website that lists all the city properties, their values, locations, and, all the information that the borough would supply you with, which is pretty good. So I can email that out. to
That'd be
council as
wonderful.
well.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Uh,
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, hold on. You're light. You're not on speaker.
We'd like to move, like we talked about, the priority land management plan. We'd like to move that up and address it sooner than later.
Right.
So.
Yep.
We just have to do it as put it on the agenda and,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. Pearlie.
Yeah, just one question. I spoke with the mayor about this, and he's not sure that, what's your understanding about if somebody approached you to buy a piece of the city property, does it have to go to bid?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Morrison, that would be my recommendation as the best approach for the city to take, because there could be multiple competing interests in that piece of property. And so in order to give everyone a fair chance to put their name in the hat for it, that would be the one benefit for the RFP of a sealed competitive bid. The other benefit is it can raise the fair market value of the piece of property. So say the city sets the minimum amount for a piece of land at 20,000, but there's 10 people interested in it. Someone might put in a bid for $40,000 to ensure they get it. So that's really beneficial for the city.
Right, but that's something we can do. That's not a requirement.
I'll defer to the city clerk and she can look into that.
Okay, thanks.
Heidi, go ahead.
There are a multitude of avenues that a city can dispose of a property, and they are in, trying to remember what title. Actually, I can grab the book right now.
I know in the past, the city of Sylvia did follow through with having a silent bids or bids that went out. And that was for city properties that went that way. Yeah, but we're actually, this is not really on our agenda for today, so let's not get waylaid. We got waylaid. So if we're done with value added to your satisfaction, Rachel, we can move to item 3, which is leaks in the city's water distribution system.
Okay, so, and just to clarify too, what I'm hearing with the value added building is there is interest in considering putting it up as is, and giving the qualifier, of course, that to the best of the city's abilities, we've identified what is incomplete with the building. And I can work with our city attorney to help address liability and risk and leasing out that property. So that's kind of what I'm operating off of. Okay, so leaks in the city's water distribution system. Let me share my screen again.
Bobby just left us. To the restroom, I believe. We'll just take 1 minute, Harmony. Okay, Bobby's back in the room. Yes, we were being polite.
All right, so I know that we have 20 more minutes left of this work session, so I'll try and make it short and sweet. I know that we've been having a lot on our plates that's pretty heavy in terms of the city, and so I wanted to share something very exciting with council, a positive glimmer of a lot of progress the city's made just over the course of the year. So you had a lay down packet for today, just showing you the community's water consumption. And so I had the most complete data from January 1 through April 30th of this year. And what I did was identified just random dates throughout this period and showed you what the usage was for each of those days. I then went to 2020 and got that same information to see where we were at last year, and then it's in your lay down packet. And so it's incredible the amount of progress that the city has made on identifying and working on our water leaks. So let's just look at the comparison table that's on the second page of your laydown. January 3rd, the city water consumption was 132,836 gallons. That same day this year, we were at 66,842. So we decreased our water consumption by 50%, which is amazing. I'm working on getting the rest of the data so that way council can see January through basically today. I still need a little bit more time to pull that together, but I was very happy to see the significant amount of progress that the city has made on fixing our water leaks. And just to point this out too, when you look at the charts, 2021, the scale of gallons consumed, the maximum amount was 120,000 gallons. You'll see that on the left-hand side because we were nowhere near what 2020 was. If you look on the left-hand side, we had to use a measuring scale of 160,000 gallons to help us show the usage. So that in and of itself is a data testament to how much water we've been saving through fixing water leaks as being one of the, I would say, primary factors. So it's a positive step for the city, and I hope that we see even more conservation of water through the improvements to our water distribution system, which has needed some help. So we're fine tuning that. And that's all I had on this topic, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council?
Yeah, I have one
John?
on February 19th. It's in between the 19th and the 26th. Is there a holiday or something at that period? Because it seems to spike the same spike, only smaller.
Through the
That's-
mayor, Councilmember Kohlberg, I don't know. Maybe it's a community day. I haven't heard of anything on February 19th, but
There's
I'm,
somewhere in there in between the 19th and that week, there's got to be something going on that people are using a lot more water. It's cold then. That just doesn't make sense to me that it does it over and over at the same time. Just
Maybe it's a big
question.
backwash. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what our consumption theoretically is supposed to be. 80 to 90,000? Is that what the 75, 80? Do you remember? Where are we? Our recommended what the city should.
Yeah, there's a number and I could pull it up in my email, but there's only so many, like, it's like, I'm trying to remember the exact number per person that we're supposed to use, but I think
100 gallons.
it was supposed to be between 30 to 40,000 gallons a day.
For this community,
For
size of this community.
Yeah, it's not much per person, and I'll look in my email real quick.
Yeah,
but
that might be a good reminder, but I mean, it's great to see that we're dropping and that we're less than what we were, but let's keep in mind what our recommended is. Great. Any other comments, council, about that?
Do we know? Well, it looks like our rate went from 66 in January back to, was that a number of 90 in April? I mean, I know that there is an influx, there's always the influx as businesses start getting ready for the season and more people come to Seldovia, but that's an interesting difference to me. Was there something going on with our infrastructure that we were working on at that point, or?
Well, George, go ahead.
I think the major usage or the big number you're looking at there, it's all leaks. We're the city is actually using about 40,000 gallons a day, which is right at where we should be. And they just fixed 2 big leaks. I read into John Gruber on the way here today. He told me they had just repaired 2 big leaks and we were down to below 40,000. So as long as we keep the leaks plugged up, we're doing fine.
Right. Yeah, that's good news. Thanks, Harmony and George. Anyone else? Bobby?
That was my question. Do we have any active leaks right now or know of any? Obviously, we had a couple. One. Okay.
through the mayor, I also wanted to shine some light on our maintenance report included in the packet. It was completed by Operator Cameron and it's very thorough and it addresses the completed water leak project on C Street. And it says in Operator Cameron's report, water consumption has been reduced 22 to 25,000 gallons a day, or an average of 79 gallons per minute to 55 gallons per minute.
Good deal. Great. Are we ready to move on to item B4? Rachel? Okay. Constructing a shower at the fire hall.
All right, so this topic was put on the agenda per request from Councilmember Sweat. Councilmember Sweat wanted to have a discussion on the shower at the fire hall. That was proposed as a COVID mitigation measure because currently volunteer EMS and firefighter staff do not have a way, after addressing a call and potentially a call for someone who does have COVID, of basically desanitizing or sanitizing themselves before going home. So I was under the impression, because this happened before I was here, that this would be a great modification for the fire hall for as a COVID mitigation measure. The city has no COVID funds left. And so it could be a consideration for the volunteer fire and EMS board to pay for the costs associated with installing a shower at the city, in the city building. The the board, the Volunteer Fire and EMS Board, owes the city money for a grant that was received for replacing the fire hoses. The grant was supposed to cover the full expense, but it didn't. So the city covered $749, I think, of it. And so if council were open to the idea of the board not paying that back, but instead using that to help with the costs associated with installing the shower, that was something that I was asked to check in with council on. And the other idea is the city could have a temporary employee capable of installing the shower, so that way they were still covered by the city's insurance. And the board could then reimburse the city for the expense of hiring that staff member to do that work. So something in response to Councilmember Sweat, I'm bringing for discussion for council.
Well, I kind of do happen to know that the fire department has a little money. And I think it's time for them to open up their wallets and, help pay for some of that, or pay for the shower to be installed. I mean, the problem I think is going to be trying to find somebody to do it, which apparently, from what I understand, has been an issue, is why it's never finished. But this is kind of stupid to have it be ready to go pretty much. Don't we have all the materials? I can't remember.
Through the mayor, I don't know, Councilmember Sweat.
Oh, yeah, I don't know that either. Well, yeah. We haven't discussed it at any of the board meetings.
Anyone else?
Right.
Anyway,
Whoops. Harmony,
Miss Madam Mayor.
Harmony, go ahead.
Yeah, is it my turn?
yes,
So this is gonna be kind of an unpopular opinion, but I think that having some sort of shower, a wash station is great, but I think that with installing that, the fire department should, I don't know if they currently do, the fire and EMS currently kick in any way towards utilities on the building. It would make sense as a volunteer department that they wouldn't, but if we're going to be installing a shower, I guess what I'm saying is that there's not really, fuel costs a lot, and heating that building costs a lot. And if we're going to install a shower that people are going to use, is it going to be only for use after a call, or is it going to be just open to our volunteers in general? And if that's the case, we need to have some sort of we're going to have to charge for heating fuel. Does that make sense? I mean, I think that it's definitely something we should pursue installing for the safety of our crew. But that's something that we need to take into consideration, the cost of running the shower.
Thank you, Harmony. George?
Isn't there hot water in that building already?
There is.
So the amount of it would cost to run a shower every now and again is probably not going to be very much. But I don't disagree with you, Harmony, but I think it's kind of a drop in the bucket. But the shower is important. It's in fact, it's essential. I don't know how we've existed this long without one. There's all kinds of ways that an EMT or a firefighter, either one, can become contaminated and need to be washed down, bunker suit and all. A shower is I think, an essential piece of equipment for our fire department.
Thank you. Pearlie, so you go into the button.
Yeah, has there been any
Right, I guess
update
to-
Oh, Harmony, it's, let's wait. Pearlie's up right now.
has there been any update on what's happening down
Just
there at
for
the wash
clarification.
down plant? As far as that shower?
Not to be a negative Nelly.
Harmony, you need to mute. Thank you. Sorry.
I think the agreement with the Sea Otter Rescue Center was put a shower and a wash facility, I believe, in the bathroom for not having to do their city sewer and water.
I can speak with that.
Yes,
Speak to that if
please,
you like,
Heidi.
Madam Mayor. They do pay the city utilities and they winterize that building. We de-winterize it for them every spring, but they pay rent and for utilities on that building, and so that space can be their space that they lock, that they lease. And then the front bathroom is open for the public, but the back wash area is they lease it. I don't want to say privately because they're a nonprofit, but they lease it for their business. That's why it's not open to the public. And they do pay for that.
And that has a shower in it, to clarify. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
So they remodeled the bathroom that was already existing to avoid hooking up city sewer and water.
Well, they do not have city water well, they have water, but I don't think they have sewer.
No, they
out
get
next
their
to it.
water from that washdown building.
Right. So they remodeled the back end of that washdown building and they rent it. They pay lease and utility for that building.
And I think that was designed, if you
Yeah,
quick,
so-
designed just in case, if there were an oil spill, that they would have an area to clean up. Is that the
Right.
concept of the shower?
Right. So the city actually, it's a service that we provide the public bathroom, but they're paying for the building because they lease it. And that front is still open for the building, for the public. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Don't sound like a very good deal, but that's beside the point. Yeah, it answered my question. I was thinking there's a shower right up there that supposedly I thought was open to the public, but evidently it's just for the Sea Otter Rescue Center people.
John?
That's kind of like the fire department, Pearlie. They need their own shower that is not open to the public. It's for when they're out on a call or working. If something happens, they need a space to clean up. And they're renting the space and paying for it. And they built it themselves, so. But the fire hall, when this building was built, at the time it was built, the city had a fire chief and it was a fire department. And they shifted to a all volunteer is when the volunteerism started. They built the fire department and I don't know how it fell through the cracks somewhere, but you do not build a fire department, a fire hall without a shower in it when you build it. It should have been done when it was built. You know, you go around the world and that's an essential. So why it's taken till 2021 and we're haggling over a shower that should have been put in 30 years ago. Thank you.
Yep. Well, I think we're haggling over it because of the expense that we're looking at. And Bobby brought up a good point. If the fire hall department has got and EMS has funds and it's important to them, then we should encourage them to use their funds to do that. And in the past I've seen, and really it's a gratis, it's all volunteer. People have used a washer and dryer in there for their personal use. And I don't see that probably wouldn't happen with the shower. And you can't blame somebody who volunteers, does EMS runs or fire runs to do that. But I also think that we have the responsibility to ask them if they have funds, please use their funds to do it. We didn't have the COVID money to do it. We don't have the COVID money. How it never got done in the beginning, who knows? But I would encourage the council to move forward with asking the department to support their shower if they see fit. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bobby?
I think that's only fair, and then if the board votes it down, well, then I guess they won't have a shower.
Right. Also, in that point, just before I say it, Bobby, is that they do owe us $740. So I'm not sure what $740 does, but if the council felt that they wanted to put that towards it to forgive that amount of the grant, okay, that's an in-kind, more than in-kind. Thank you. Sorry, Bobby.
And well, it's okay, and especially if they already have the area prepped and have the materials already, I would think that the board would vote to go ahead and finish it. Well, they might not like it, but like I said, I don't think it's going to cost that much. The problem is going to be trying to find somebody to do it. So,
Okay, thank you. Any more comments on the constructing a shower and fire hall direction for our city manager? Did you get enough? Okay, all right, great. Anything else?
Thank you, council, for making the time.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. All actually, do I need a motion? Yeah, oh, sorry, John.
I had one thing from a comment earlier. We can move stuff up, but let's do not move it past finishing with the planning and zoning and getting that portion of the stuff straightened out, unless it's all done and I missed something.
I'm sorry, John, I don't know.
We were working on planning and zoning at one time, and it's kind of like went off to the wayside a little bit. Have we finished that, Heidi?
There is still the section on the vacancy that needs to be worked on, or the request from council to work on a vacancy ordinance. However, we've been in the process of getting new members to the planning commission, and we have 3 now, so that's great. But what they are doing for council right now was they were referred to the review of the comprehensive plan. And so they've reviewed 2 parts of the comprehensive plan, and they have 3 left. And so that hopefully will be coming before council in September, as long as the schedule keeps going the way it is. But I think everybody's just kind of working side by side at this point in time, trying to get things done as efficiently as they can.
I would
you.
like to see P and Z done before it's forgot.
Okay, all right, we're done. Our meeting's done. Is she- Need a motion.
No, this is a
Okay.
work session, so
Okay.
no
Okay.
motions or
Okay.
actions.
All right, work session is over, 4 o'clock.
Thank you. Thank you.